Ambassador Tae-min stared at the holographic display floating above his desk. Red dots marked the locations where ships had vanished. Yellow dots showed where probes had gone silent. Blue dots indicated the last known positions of diplomatic missions that never returned. All of them formed a perfect circle around a dark section of space labeled simply as human territory. 200 years. That was how long the galaxy had been trying to contact humanity. 200 years of failure. Tae-min touched one of the red dots with his finger. The display zoomed in, showing details of the Vorthak expedition from 50 years ago. Commander Boram had led 12 ships filled with the galaxy's best diplomats. They had crossed into human space with messages of peace and friendship. Then, nothing. Complete silence. "Still studying the mystery?" asked Dr. Han Wool as she entered the office. The xenobiologist carried a thick data pad under her arm. "Someone has to," Tae-min replied. "The council meets tomorrow. They want answers I don't have." Han Wool set her data pad on the desk. "Maybe I can help. I've been studying what we know about humans before they disappeared." Tae-min laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's not much. They were new to space travel, primitive weapons, simple technology. Then suddenly they claimed 40,000 star systems and told everyone to stay away." "That's what doesn't make sense," Han Wool said. She activated her data pad, showing images of early human settlements. "Look at these colonies from 200 years ago. Basic domes, simple mining equipment, solar panels for power. Now look at this." The image changed to show long-range telescope data of human space. Massive structures floated between stars. Energy readings that made no sense. Signs of engineering projects larger than entire planets. How does a species go from basic space travel to this in just 2 centuries? Han Wool asked. Tae-min had wondered the same thing many times. Maybe they found something, some ancient technology. Or maybe, Han Wool said quietly, we're missing part of the story. The next morning, Tae-min stood before the Galactic Council. 847 species filled the massive chamber. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy had come to hear his report. "Honored delegates," Tae-min began, "I must report another failure. Our latest probe ceased transmission the moment it entered human space." Angry voices filled the chamber. The Zephyrian delegate stood up, his 4 arms waving in frustration. "This cannot continue. Humans control the richest systems in the galaxy, systems we need for expansion." "They block our trade routes," shouted the Corellian representative. "Ships must travel twice as far to avoid their territory." Tae-min raised his hand for silence. "I understand your concerns, but we must face facts. Every attempt at contact has failed. Perhaps it's time to accept that humans don't want contact with us." Unacceptable. The voice belonged to High Counselor Wu Jin, leader of the entire Galactic Council. No single species can claim such a large portion of the galaxy. "They must explain themselves," Dr. Han Wool spoke from the observation gallery. "With respect, Counselor, what if they can't explain? What if something happened to them?" The chamber fell silent. It was an idea no one wanted to consider. What could happen to an entire species that would make them cut off all contact with the galaxy? High Counselor Wu Jin made his decision. "I'm authorizing a new mission, our most advanced stealth ship with our best diplomat." His eyes fixed on Tae-min. "You will get us answers." 3 days later, Tae-min stood on the bridge of the Star Whisper, the most advanced ship in the Altrurian fleet. The stealth systems could hide them from any known sensor technology. The diplomatic codes in their computer contained greetings in every known language. "Approaching the boundary of human space," reported the pilot. "All systems normal." Through the view screen, space looked exactly the same as everywhere else. Stars, nebulae, the occasional asteroid. Nothing to indicate they were about to enter the most mysterious region of the galaxy. "Beginning sensor sweep," said the science officer. I'm detecting... That's strange. What is it? Taemin asked. There's something here, like a wall, but not solid. It's affecting space itself. The pilot checked his instruments. Energy readings are off the charts. Whatever this is, it's using more power than our entire homeworld. Taemin felt his heart racing. After 200 years, they were finally seeing something new. Can we pass through it? Unknown, sir. But if we do, there's no guarantee our communications will work. We might end up like all the others. Taemin thought of the red dots on his display, all those ships and crews who had vanished. But he also thought of the 847 species counting on him for answers. Take us through. The ship moved forward. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the stars around them began to shimmer like water. The energy readings spiked so high that several instruments shut down to protect themselves. We're through, the pilot announced. But our quantum communicator just went dead. We're cut off from the galaxy. Taemin was about to respond when the science officer gasped. Contact! Large ship approaching fast! On the view screen, a vessel appeared that made Taemin's breath catch. It was huge, easily 10 times the size of their ship. But more than that, it looked wrong somehow. The metal seemed to shift and flow like liquid. Lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that hurt to look at. They're hailing us, the communications officer reported, surprise clear in her voice. On screen. The face that appeared was definitely human, but Taemin had never seen a human look so calm and confident. She was young, maybe 30 standard years, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. I am Captain Soo-jin of the Human Border Guard, she said. Her voice was steady and clear. You have entered restricted space. This is your only warning. Turn around and leave immediately. Taemin stepped forward. Captain, I am Ambassador Taemin of the Galactic Council. We come in peace, seeking dialogue between our peoples. Captain Soo-jin's expression didn't change. There will be no dialogue. You will turn around now, or you will be turned around. Captain, please. The galaxy has been trying to contact humanity for 200 years. We just want to understand. You want to understand? Soo-jin interrupted. For the first time, emotion flickered across her face. It looked like sadness, mixed with something else. Something that might have been pity. Then understand this, Ambassador. Some doors should stay closed. Some questions should never be asked. Go back to your council. Tell them that humans have chosen isolation for good reasons. But why? Taemin pleaded. What happened? What are you afraid of? Soo-jin was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. We're not afraid of anything, Ambassador. The galaxy should be afraid of us. The transmission ended. On the view screen, the human ship began to move away. But as it did, Taemin caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold. In the distance, barely visible against the stars, were more ships. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. All of them larger than anything the galaxy had ever built. Take us home, Taemin whispered. As the Star Whisper turned back toward the barrier, Taemin realized that his mission had been both a success and a failure. He had made contact with humanity. He had gotten answers. But those answers only led to bigger, more frightening questions. What had humanity become in their 200 years of isolation? And why did Captain Soo-jin look so sad when she warned the galaxy to be afraid? The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in recorded history. News of Taemin's contact with humanity had spread across the galaxy in just 3 days. Now representatives from every species, every government, every trade union wanted answers. High Counselor Wu Jin called for order as voices filled the massive chamber. Delegates, please. Ambassador Taemin will share his report. Taemin stood at the central podium, feeling the weight of nearly 1,000 eyes upon him. The holographic display behind him showed the recording of Captain Sujin's warning. "As you can see," Taemin said, "humans are not only alive, but clearly advanced beyond our understanding. Their technology appears to manipulate space itself." Dr. Min Seo, the Council's chief military strategist, stood up from her seat. "Advanced how? One ship does not make them a galactic power." "That's just it," Taemin replied. It wasn't one ship. He changed the display to show the sensor readings from his mission. "Our instruments detected massive energy signatures throughout human space, structures larger than planets, fleets that dwarf our combined military forces." The chamber erupted in angry voices. The Nexarian delegate shouted over the noise. "Impossible! 200 years ago they were mining asteroids with basic equipment." "Then explain this," said Dr. Han Wool, activating her own data pad. The main display changed to show long-range telescope observations. "These images were taken last month. Look at the Kepler 442 system." The delegates fell silent as they stared at the impossible sight. The system's star was surrounded by a perfect ring of artificial structures. Each structure was the size of a small moon, and there were thousands of them. "This is a Dyson swarm," Han Wool explained, "a megastructure that captures the total energy output of a star. The engineering required is beyond anything our civilization has achieved." Dr. Min Seo studied the images with growing alarm. "If they can build this, their military capabilities must be—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Everyone in the chamber understood what she meant. High Counselor Wu Jin stepped forward. "This changes everything. Humanity has been quietly building an empire in our galaxy. We cannot allow this to continue unchecked." "With respect, Counselor," Taemin said, "Captain Sujin's warning was clear. They want to be left alone. A species doesn't build weapons like this just to be left alone," Min Seo replied. "They build them to conquer." The debate continued for hours. Some delegates wanted immediate military action. Others urged caution. A few suggested accepting human isolation and working around it. Finally, the Corellian ambassador stood up. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. "I remember the early reports about humans. When they first appeared in our space, they seemed different. They treated all species as equals. Even the slavery guilds couldn't use them as workers." "What's your point?" asked the Zephyrian delegate. "My point is that maybe we're looking at this wrong. What if they're not planning to conquer us? What if they're afraid of us?" The chamber fell silent. It was a thought that no one had considered. Dr. Han Wool spoke up from the gallery. "There are gaps in our historical records from that time period. Key files that were sealed or destroyed. I've been trying to access them for years." High Counselor Wu Jin's expression hardened. "Those files are sealed for good reason. Ancient history has no bearing on our current situation." But Taemin noticed something in the counselor's eyes. Fear. Guilt? Something was being hidden. The final vote was close, but the decision was made. The galaxy would send a massive diplomatic fleet to human space, 100 ships representing every major species, a show of unity and strength that no one could ignore. "If humanity wants to explain their actions, this is their chance," Wu Jin announced. "If they refuse, then we'll know their true intentions." 2 weeks later, the largest fleet in galactic history approached the border of human space. Taemin commanded the lead ship, but he felt no pride in the moment. Captain Sujin's warning echoed in his mind. "The galaxy should be afraid of us." "Approaching the barrier," reported the fleet commander. "All ships maintaining formation." As they crossed into human space, sensors immediately detected incoming ships. But these weren't the sleek vessels Taemin had seen before. These were giants. Each one was the size of a small moon, their hulls covered in armor that seemed to bend light around it. "This is Admiral Kyung-ho of the Human Defense Force," came a voice over the communications system. The man who appeared on screen was older than Captain Sujin, with gray hair and tired eyes. "You are trespassing in restricted space with military vessels." High Counselor Wu Jin had joined the mission personally. He stepped forward with all the authority of his office. "Admiral, I am High Counselor Wu Jin, leader of the Galactic Council. We demand to speak with your government." Admiral Kyung Ho's expression didn't change. "You demand? You bring a war fleet into our space and make demands? This is a diplomatic mission," Wu Jin insisted. "We seek understanding between our peoples." "Understanding," the Admiral repeated. He seemed to find the word amusing. "Very well. Officer Jin-A, please give our guests some understanding." A young woman appeared on screen beside the Admiral. She looked barely 20, with bright eyes, and a smile that didn't reach them. "Hello, delegates of the Galactic Council," Jin-A said in a cheerful voice. "My name is Jin-A, and I'll be your history teacher today. Let's start with a quiz. Can anyone tell me what happened to the human colonies at Proxima Centauri?" The delegates looked confused. Dr. Minseo checked her records. "According to our files, those colonies were abandoned. Environmental problems." "Wrong," Jin-A said, her smile growing wider. "They were destroyed. Every man, woman, and child killed. Can anyone guess by whom?" Uncomfortable silence filled the fleet channels. "No takers? Well, let me give you a hint. The weapon used was a biological agent, something that attacked human DNA specifically. Very advanced stuff for the time period." Tae Min felt ice forming in his stomach. Around him, the bridge crew was looking at their instruments with growing alarm. "Here's another fun fact," Ginny continued. "Did you know that every human colony in the Outer Rim suffered similar environmental problems over a 20-year period? Quite a coincidence, don't you think?" High Counselor Wu Jin's face had gone pale. "Officer, I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," Ginny interrupted, her cheerful tone never wavering. "I'm stating facts. The Galactic Council systematically murdered over 2 billion humans. You called it the Silent Purge. You thought you had wiped us out completely." The communications channels erupted in panicked voices from across the fleet. Some delegates denied the accusations. Others demanded proof. But Tae Min noticed that several of the older delegates had gone very quiet. Admiral Kyung Ho spoke over the chaos. "We know who you are. We know what you did. You should be grateful we chose isolation instead of justice." "This is impossible," Dr. Minseo whispered. "The records would show—" "The records were altered," Jin-A said. "Sealed, classified, hidden away so that future generations wouldn't have to face what their ancestors did. But we remember. We always remember." High Counselor Wu Jin tried to regain control. "Even if these accusations were true, that was 2 centuries ago. We had nothing to do with it?" Admiral Kyung Ho's voice turned cold. "Your predecessor ordered it. Your military carried it out. Your scientists created the weapon, and your successors covered it up." The massive human ships began moving closer to the galactic fleet. Even at this distance, their weapons were clearly visible. Weapons that looked nothing like conventional technology. "Here's what's going to happen," Admiral Kyung Ho said. "You're going to turn around and leave. You're going to return to your council and tell them that humanity remembers. Tell them that we chose mercy over revenge, but that choice isn't permanent." "And if we refuse?" Wu Jin asked, though his voice shook. Jin-A's smile finally disappeared. "Then you'll discover what 200 years of human ingenuity can accomplish when motivated by the memory of genocide." One by one, the ships of the galactic fleet began turning around. Even the most aggressive delegates understood they were facing something far beyond their capability to handle. As Tae Min's ship retreated from human space, he realized that everything had changed. The galaxy wasn't dealing with isolationist humans. They were dealing with survivors of attempted genocide who had spent 2 centuries becoming something terrifying. And the worst part was, Jin-A was right. They should be grateful that humans had chosen isolation over revenge. At least, they should be grateful for now. Elder Hyojin had lived for 400 years, long enough to see the galaxy change in ways most species couldn't imagine. She sat in her private chamber, staring at a data crystal that she had kept hidden for 2 centuries. The crystal contained records that the Galactic Council had tried very hard to destroy. The door chimed softly. "Enter," she said, knowing who it would be. High Counselor Wu Jin stepped into the chamber, his face showing the strain of the past few weeks. "Elder Hyojin, I need to know what really happened." "You mean you need to know how much the humans remember?" she corrected. "There's a difference." Wu Jin sat down across from her, suddenly looking much older than his years. "The council is in chaos. Half the delegates are calling for immediate military action. The other half want to negotiate. None of them understand what we're really dealing with. And you think you do?" "I think," Wu Jin said carefully, "that Officer Jin'e knew details that should have been impossible to know. Details that were classified at levels above even my clearance." Hyojin picked up the data crystal and held it to the light. "I was there, you know. During the Silent Purge. I was young then, serving as an aide to the Zeltharian delegation. The records say the Zeltharians opposed the action. The records lie." Hyojin activated the crystal, and holographic documents filled the air around them. "We opposed it publicly while supporting it privately, just like most of the other neutral species." Wu Jin read the documents with growing horror. "Orders to distribute biological weapons, plans to divide human territory after their extinction, lists of species that would benefit from human resources." "This can't be real," he whispered. "Oh, it's real. Would you like to know why humanity was targeted?" Wu Jin nodded, though he looked like he might be sick. "Because they were different," Hyojin said. "Every other species in the galaxy accepted the natural order. Strong species ruled over weak ones. The Corellians enslaved the Nexarians. The Zephyrians used the Altrurians as cheap labor. Everyone understood their place. But not the humans." "Not the humans," she confirmed. "They treated everyone as equals. They refused to use slave labor. They shared their technology freely. They even tried to set up trade agreements that benefited smaller species. That doesn't sound like a reason for genocide." Hyojin laughed bitterly. "You're thinking like a modern delegate. Back then, the galaxy was ruled by 12 species, the great powers. They had spent millennia building a system where they stayed on top, and everyone else stayed below. Humans threatened that system simply by existing." She changed the display to show population charts and economic projections. Human colonies were growing fast. Their technology was advancing rapidly. Within 50 years, they would have been too powerful to control. Within 100, they might have challenged the entire galactic order. So the great powers decided to eliminate them first. Exactly. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. A biological weapon that would sterilize the human population within 2 generations. No dramatic military action, no messy rebellions. Just a slow, quiet extinction that would look like natural demographic decline. Wu Jin stared at the documents. How many knew? At the highest levels? Maybe 100 individuals across all 12 species. At the working level? Thousands. Scientists, military officers, logistics coordinators, all sworn to secrecy. And it worked? For a while. Human colonies started reporting fertility problems. Birth rates dropped. Some settlements were abandoned. We thought we had succeeded, but we hadn't. "No," Hyojin said softly. "We had created something far worse than we destroyed." Meanwhile, in the ruins of the Proxima Centauri colonies, Captain Dong Wu led a small team of human archaeologists through the abandoned settlements. The official galactic records listed this as an environmental disaster, but the humans knew better. "Radiation levels are still elevated in Sector 7, reported his assistant. "Whatever they used here, it was designed to linger." Dong Wu knelt beside a memorial wall where names were carved into black stone. Thousands of names. Men, women, children. An entire world's population reduced to letters in rock. They used a binary weapon, said Dr. Sungmin, the team's genetic specialist. She held up a sample collector filled with contaminated soil. 2. Harmless components that became lethal when combined in human DNA. Clever, Dongwu said without emotion. Undetectable until it was too late. That's not the clever part, Sungmin continued. The weapon was designed to activate dormant genetic sequences. Sequences that existed in human DNA but had been inactive for millions of years. Dongwu stood up from the memorial. Show me. They moved to the mobile laboratory that had been set up in the colony's former town center. Sungmin activated AI, holographic display showing human genetic code before and after exposure to the weapon. Here's normal human DNA, she said, highlighting certain sequences. And here's what happened after exposure to the biological weapon. The display showed DNA strands literally rewriting themselves, new connections forming, entire sections of our genetic code activating that had never been active before. The weapon didn't just try to sterilize us, Sungmin explained. It unlocked something that was already inside us, something that had been sleeping. The deep field connection, Dongwu said. Exactly. Every human exposed to the weapon or born after exposure has an active neural pathway to what we call the deep field, a layer of reality that exists beneath normal space-time. Dongwu walked to the window and looked out at the ruined landscape. They tried to kill us, and instead they made us into something new. The question is, Sungmin said, did they know? Was this intentional? Across the galaxy, archivist Zhu Wan sat in the deepest vaults of the Galactic Historical Archive. Few beings knew this place existed. Fewer still had access to the records stored here. Documents too sensitive for normal archives, too dangerous for public knowledge. She had spent days searching through files that officially didn't exist. Military, records from the Silent Purge period. Scientific reports on biological weapons, communications between the great powers about something called Project Final Solution. What she found made her blood run cold. The biological weapon hadn't been designed just to sterilize humans. According to the classified research files, it was intended to trigger a genetic cascade that would fundamentally alter human neurochemistry. The goal was to create a compliant worker species. Humans who would be grateful to serve their galactic masters. But something had gone wrong. Instead of creating servants, they had created something else entirely. Dr. Kang Su, the project's lead scientist, had noted strange readings in the test subjects, increased brain activity in regions associated with consciousness and perception. Subjects reporting unusual dreams and sensory experiences, some claiming they could see things that weren't there. The final report was marked with the highest classification level. Project terminated due to uncontrolled variables. All research, materials to be destroyed, all personnel to be reassigned. But Juwan knew that the project hadn't been terminated. It had been deployed across every human colony in the galaxy. She copied the files to a secure drive and made her way back to the surface. The galaxy needed to know the truth. They hadn't committed genocide out of fear or greed. They had committed it trying to create the perfect slaves. Instead, they had created their greatest nightmare. Elder Hyo-jin finished her story and looked at High Counselor Wu-jin's pale face. Now you know why the humans chose isolation. They remember what we tried to do to them. More importantly, they know what we actually did to them. The genetic changes, Wu-jin whispered, are irreversible, Hyo-jin confirmed. Every human, born in the last 2 centuries, carries the modifications. They're not the same species we tried to destroy. They're something new, something we created through our own cruelty. What do they want? Justice would be reasonable. Revenge would be understandable. But what they chose was mercy. They isolated themselves to protect us from what they've become. Wu Jin stood up slowly. And now, We've forced them out of isolation. Yes. And I fear that their patience may finally be coming to an end. As if summoned by her words, emergency alerts began sounding throughout the station. Reports flooded in, from across the galaxy. Human ships had been detected at the edge of dozens of star systems. Not attacking, not threatening, just watching. The 200-year isolation was over. Humanity had returned to galactic space, and nobody knew what they intended to do next. The message arrived simultaneously at every major government center across the galaxy. Not through communication networks or diplomatic channels, but directly into the minds of every planetary leader. They heard it in their own languages, spoken, in voices that seemed to come from inside their heads. The Galactic Council will send one representative to learn the truth about humanity. Choose carefully. They may not return unchanged. The message was signed simply, General Yun Wu, Supreme, Commander of Human Forces. The emergency session that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. 847 species tried to speak at once, their voices creating chaos in the Great Chamber. Some delegates demanded military action against what they called a psychic attack. Others insisted on immediate surrender. Most simply sat in stunned silence. High Counselor Wu Jin called for order, though his own hands shook as he held his ceremonial staff. Delegates, please, we must respond to this invitation. Invitation? The Corellian ambassador's voice cracked. With fear. They spoke directly into our minds. How is that possible? Dr. Han Wool stood up in the observer's gallery. If I may, Counselor, based on our research into human technology, this appears to be quantum entanglement communication. They're using principles of physics we don't fully understand. The method. Doesn't matter, said Dr. Min Seo. What matters is that they can reach any of us, anywhere, anytime. Our military defenses are meaningless against this capability. Elder Hyojin watched the proceedings from her private box. She had seen the galaxy's reaction to human contact before, but this was different. This was fear mixed with desperate curiosity. The delegates knew they were facing something beyond their understanding, but they couldn't resist the need to know more. Ambassador Taemin stepped forward. I volunteer to go. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew that Taemin had been the only delegate to survive direct contact with humans. He had seen their ships, spoken with their officers. If anyone could handle this mission, it would be him. Ambassador, Wu Jin said carefully, you understand that this may be a trap. Yes, Taemin replied, but it may also be our only chance to understand what humanity has become and why they've shown us mercy instead of destroying us outright. 3 days later, Taemin stood alone on the bridge of a small diplomatic vessel at the edge of human space. His crew had been ordered to stay behind. This journey, whatever it led to, was meant for him alone. The response to his arrival came immediately. Not a ship this time, but a structure that materialized around his vessel like a soap bubble forming in water. One moment he was in open space, the next he was inside a vast chamber filled with impossible architecture. Welcome, Ambassador Taemin. The voice belonged to Dr. Yi Seo, a woman who appeared to be in her 40s but whose eyes seemed much older. She stood on what looked like a platform of crystallized light, wearing clothes that seemed to be woven from starlight itself. Dr. Yi Seo, I presume, Taemin said, trying to hide his amazement at his surroundings. I thank you for this opportunity. Don't thank me yet, she replied. You may not survive what you're about to learn, not mentally intact anyway. She gestured, and the chamber around them changed. Suddenly they were standing in what looked like a human city, but unlike any city Taemin had ever seen. Buildings that defied gravity floated in the air. Gardens grew in patterns that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. And everywhere, Humans moved with a grace and purpose that seemed almost supernatural. "This is New Geneva," Dr. Yiseo explained. "One of our smaller settlements. Population, 12 million. "Where are we?" Taemin asked. "What star system?" "We're not in a star system. We're in what we call a pocket dimension, a space that exists alongside normal reality but separate from it." Taemin felt his understanding of physics crumbling. "That's impossible." "For your species, yes. For us, it's simply engineering." Dr. Yiseo began walking along a path that seemed to create itself beneath their feet. "Would you like to know how we learned to do this?" "The biological weapon," Taemin said. "The one your people claim was used against you." "Not claim. No." Dr. Yiseo stopped walking and turned to face him. The weapon was designed to activate dormant neural pathways in human brains, pathways that connected us to what we call the deep field. Deep field? "Imagine reality as an ocean," she said. "Your species, all galactic species, live on the surface. You see the waves, feel the currents, but you never dive below. The deep field is the depths of that ocean, a layer of existence where thought and reality intersect." As she spoke, the city around them began to change. Buildings reshaped themselves. The sky shifted from blue to gold to colors that had no names. And through it all, the humans they passed seemed completely unaffected, as if reality-altering phenomena were perfectly normal. "Every human born after the weapon's deployment can access the deep field," Dr. Yiseo continued. "We can perceive dimensions of space and time that don't exist for other species. We can manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level through conscious intention." "You're saying the weapon gave you psychic powers?" "Not psychic, quantum. We don't break the laws of physics. We simply access laws that your species cannot perceive." They stopped in front of a building that seemed to be made of crystallized mathematics. Inside, Taemin could see humans working with equipment that defied description. Some appeared to be manipulating light with their bare hands. Others were having conversations with geometric patterns that responded like living beings. "This is our research center," Dr. Yiseo said. "We're studying the full implications of our transformation. What we've discovered is troubling." "How so?" "The genetic changes aren't stable. They're continuing to evolve. Each generation of humans born after the weapon's deployment is more connected to the deep field than the last. We estimate that within 50 years, our species will be unrecognizable to current galactic standards." Taemin felt a chill run down his spine. "What does that mean?" "It means," said a new voice, "that we're becoming something that transcends biological existence entirely." The speaker was Ambassador Changmin, though he looked nothing like the human diplomats Taemin had seen in historical records. His skin seemed to shimmer with internal light, and his eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. "I knew your predecessor," Changmin said. "Ambassador Kelton of the Altrurian Council. I was serving in the human embassy when the biological weapon was deployed. You were there during the attack? I was one of the first to be affected. I watched my colleagues die around me as the weapon activated our dormant genetics. I felt my consciousness expanding, connecting to something vast and incomprehensible." Chang Min gestured, and suddenly they were no longer in the city. They stood in what looked like the void between galaxies, surrounded by streams of light that pulsed with meaning and purpose. "This is how humans perceive reality now," Chang Min explained. "Every thought, every emotion, every decision creates ripples in the deep field that affect the physical universe. We're not just observers of reality anymore. We're participants in its creation." "That's why you isolated yourselves," Taemin realized. "You weren't afraid of the galaxy. You were afraid of what you might do to it." Exactly. A single human having a bad day could accidentally destabilize a star system. A moment of anger could tear holes in space-time. We had to learn control before we could risk contact with other species. Dr. Yiseo appeared beside them. But now the galaxy has forced contact. Your council's aggressive actions have convinced many humans that isolation is no longer sustainable. What does that mean for the rest of us? That depends, said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, on what choice your species makes. The void around them was suddenly filled with presence, not a person, but a collective consciousness that spoke with the voices of millions. Taemin knew instinctively that he was experiencing the collective voice of humanity. We have watched your species for 2 centuries, the collective said. We have seen you struggle with the same problems that plagued the galaxy when we left. War, slavery, exploitation, suffering. We've tried to improve, Taemin said weakly. You have tried, but you have not succeeded. The strong still prey upon the weak. The powerful still exploit the powerless. The cycle continues. What would you have us do? Choose, the collective replied. The galaxy stands at a crossroads. We offer 3 paths forward. But know this, there is no path back. Whatever choice you make will change everything. The void began to fade, and Taemin found himself back on his ship. But he was not unchanged. In his mind, he carried images and sensations that no non-human had ever experienced. He had seen reality from a human perspective, and it had shown him just how small and limited his species truly was. As his ship began the journey back to galactic space, Taemin realized that he carried the weight of the entire galaxy's future. The choice that humanity offered would determine whether the species of the galaxy evolved into something greater or remained forever trapped in their current limitations. But first, he had to convince the Council that humanity's offer was real, and that the consequences of their choice would be permanent and irreversible. The galaxy was about to learn that some gifts came with a price that could never be repaid. Ambassador Taemin stood before the Galactic Council, but he was no longer the same being who had volunteered for the mission to human space. His eyes held depths that hadn't been there before, and when he spoke, some delegates swore they could hear echoes of voices that weren't quite his own. Honored delegates, he began, I have seen what humanity has become. I have experienced their reality, and I must tell you that everything we thought we knew about existence itself is wrong. The chamber fell silent. Even the most skeptical delegates could sense that something fundamental had changed in their ambassador. Humanity offers the galaxy 3 choices, Taemin continued. But before I explain them, you must understand what we're really dealing with. Humans are no longer bound by the limitations that constrain the rest of us. They exist partially outside normal space-time. They can manipulate reality through conscious will. They have become something beyond biological evolution. High Counselor Wu Jin leaned forward. What exactly are you saying, Ambassador? I'm saying that the biological weapon didn't just fail to destroy humanity. It elevated them to a level of existence that makes them functionally godlike by our standards. Angry voices erupted throughout the chamber. Several delegates accused Taemin of being brainwashed or mentally compromised. Others demanded proof of his claims. You want proof? Taemin asked. Very well. He closed his eyes and concentrated on something the humans had shown him. A moment later, every delegate in the chamber experienced a brief flash of vision. For just an instant, they saw reality as humans saw it. Layers upon layers of interconnected energy, where thought and matter danced together in patterns of impossible complexity. The chamber fell into stunned silence. That was just a glimpse, Taemin said, a fragment of what human consciousness experiences every moment. Now let me explain their offer. A holographic display activated, showing 3 distinct paths branching out from the current moment. The first choice is integration, Taemin announced. President So Young will explain. The hologram shifted to show a human woman who radiated calm authority. Her presence filled the chamber with a sense of peace that was almost overwhelming. "Greetings, species of the galaxy," President So-Young said. "Integration means that humanity will share our evolutionary advancement with all willing species. We will teach you to access the deep field. We will show you how to transcend the limitations of biological existence. Within a generation, every species in the galaxy could possess the same capabilities that humans now have. But," Taemin added, "this choice comes with a price. Species that choose integration will fundamentally change. Your biology, your consciousness, your entire way of existing will be transformed. You will become something new, something that may no longer resemble what you once were." The delegates exchanged worried glances. The Nexarian representative stood up. "What guarantee do we have that we would remain ourselves?" President So-Young's expression grew sad. "None. Evolution is never a guarantee of survival. It is always a risk. We can only promise that what you become will be more than what you are now." The hologram shifted again, showing an elderly human man whose eyes held the wisdom of centuries. "The second choice is cooperation," announced Elder Do-hyun. "Humanity will remain separate, but will share specific technologies and knowledge that can benefit all species. We will provide clean energy systems, medical advances, communication technologies, and solutions to galactic problems. But we will not share the deeper knowledge that could transform your species." Taemin nodded. "This choice allows the galaxy to advance while preserving the essential nature of each species. But it also means accepting permanent inequality. Humans would remain fundamentally more advanced than any other species." "Is that not already the case?" asked the Corellian ambassador. "Yes," Taemin replied, "but this choice would make it official and permanent." The hologram changed one final time, showing a human in a military uniform whose very presence seemed to bend space around him. "The third choice is departure," announced Captain Yeon-woo. "Humanity will leave this galaxy entirely. We have identified suitable galaxies for human expansion. We will migrate our entire civilization, leaving the Milky Way to develop naturally without our influence. This choice preserves the independence and natural development of all galactic species," Taemin explained. "But it also means giving up any chance of accessing human knowledge or technology. The galaxy would continue as it has for millennia, with all the same problems and limitations." High Counselor Wu Jin studied the three options. "How long do we have to decide?" "1 galactic standard year," Taemin replied. "But understand that this choice will be made collectively. Humanity will not accept a divided decision. The galaxy must speak with one voice." The debate that followed lasted for months. Species caucused in private groups, formed temporary alliances, and broke apart over philosophical differences. Some wanted the power that integration promised. Others feared losing their identity. Many preferred the safety of cooperation, while a few insisted that departure was the only way to preserve galactic independence. During this time, humanity demonstrated their patience by remaining completely silent. No threats, no pressure, no attempts to influence the decision. They simply waited at the edges of galactic space, their massive ships a constant reminder of the choice that lay ahead. As the deadline approached, it became clear that the galaxy was deeply divided. The final vote was scheduled for the anniversary of Taemin's return from human space. But before the vote could take place, something unprecedented happened. The collective voice of humanity spoke directly to every sentient being in the galaxy, simultaneously, not to their leaders or governments, but to each individual consciousness. Every person, from the humblest worker to the greatest ruler, heard the same message in their own language, spoken in their own inner voice. For exactly 1 minute, every being in the galaxy experienced reality from a human perspective. They felt the connection to the deep field. They sensed the vast networks of energy and thought that underlied existence. They understood for just a moment what humanity had become. And in that moment, they also felt something else. The weight of responsibility that came with such power. The constant need for control and restraint. The terrible knowledge that a single moment of carelessness could destroy entire worlds. When the experience ended, the galaxy was changed. Not physically, but psychologically. Every being now understood what the choice really meant. The final vote was unanimous. The galaxy chose cooperation. High Counselor Wu Jin announced the decision in a ceremony broadcast across all inhabited worlds. We choose to remain ourselves while accepting humanity's help to become better versions of ourselves. We ask for your knowledge to solve our problems, your technology to improve our lives, and your wisdom to guide our development. But we choose to remain who we are. The response came from President So-young herself, appearing in person at the council chambers for the first time in human history. Her ship had materialized in the station's main bay without triggering any sensors or defenses. "We respect your choice," she said simply, "and we will honor it. Humanity will establish liaison offices in major galactic centers. We will provide the technologies and knowledge you need, but we will not force evolution upon you." "What about the boundary around human space?" asked Taemin. "It will remain, but it will become visible. A reminder of the choice that was made and the respect that must be maintained." As President So-young departed, she left behind a gift, a set of quantum communication devices that would allow instant contact between humanity and the galactic government. The devices came with a simple message: "For when you are ready for the next choice." Years passed. The galaxy transformed under human guidance. Diseases were cured. Energy became unlimited and clean. Communication across vast distances became instantaneous. Conflicts between species decreased as cooperation became more beneficial than competition. But the most important change was less visible. The galaxy had learned that some borders existed not to keep others out, but to keep incredible power from overwhelming everything around it. They had learned that mercy could be the greatest strength, and that some gifts were too dangerous to accept without careful thought. Elder Hyo Jin, now ancient even by her species' standards, made one final entry in her private journal. "Today marks the 10th anniversary of the choice. The galaxy is more prosperous and peaceful than it has ever been, but we all live with the knowledge that just beyond our reach lies a form of existence we cannot comprehend. Humanity continues to evolve, growing ever more distant from what they once were. Sometimes I wonder if we made the right choice. Other times I am grateful that we had the wisdom to know our limitations." She paused, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed quite as distant as they once had. "Perhaps someday, when we have grown enough as a civilization, we will be ready for integration. Perhaps we will choose to follow humanity into whatever they are becoming. But for now, it is enough to know that the choice exists, that somewhere in the universe, beings who were once like us have transcended every limitation we thought was permanent. And they remember where they came from,